My latest body of work is a lot to do with the lakes around this area. A lot of my painting talks about the lakes and the importance they are to people. There's significant sites around there as well, like women's birthing sites. It's part of the creation stories where the Walpole came through on the way down south. As it went under and above the ground, it created the lakes. If you look at an aerial map, you'll see there's a whole row of lakes going to the south and another row going north, right up to Joondalup. I've lived in this area for about 20 years, and the kids grew up here around the lakes, enjoying the animals and plants and the water. It's beautiful. It's just so alive and serene and peaceful and exciting and everything. I didn't feel that comfortable when I first moved here because, just all the destruction and devastation. They cleared everything to make houses and hardly left any trees, but they've all grown back. So the energy's come back. The birds have come back. I found out later that my parents had a camp around Bibra Lake. There were still Noongars camped around the lakes in the early 60s, and my sister and I would have been there as well as babies, like little tiny kids. I was taken from my parents, I'm not sure, because I know when I was 2 I was in some hospital somewhere, like Princess Margaret, then shifted to another hospital. Apparently I had tuberculosis. I didn't read this until I was adult with kids before I found out, looking at old welfare records. And I'm not sure where we were taken from, whether it was the Bibra Lake area, which is here. It sort of makes me feel I've come the full circle back here. Yeah, I was brought up at Nyoongar with my 2 sisters. I don't know, it's just funny I ended back here when I had kids, because I found all that later. When I left high school, I wanted to do art, and the careers officer said, there's no career in art. This is back in the 70s. So I tried and handed other stuff like secretarial college and tried graphic arts. Stuck at it for 2 years. And then later on, when I had kids, I just stayed home. And years later, I discovered an art course and just started as a mature age student. And I went back to do my year 11 and 12 at I was 32, so I didn't start making art till I was late 30s, so I started quite late. I didn't realise there were classes in art. Sounds a bit silly, but just not being aware of what's available. When I first started at art school, I was doing a lot of mother and child. It was very figurative, and I think that was a lot of myself getting out there, like my own feelings. And I don't tend to question what they're about. It's just whatever comes out of me. Like when I first started painting, I'd say, look, I like this image is in my head, I'm going to paint it. And it just wants to be what it wants to be. It'll change, like from this happy painting I was going to do with 2 people with arms around each other, like 2 kids. And then by the time I'd finished, it was one lone figure. Two of my favourite people are Mark Rothko. I just love his colours, the soul that's in them, the beauty, that feeling. And Rover Thomas, which I find they sit really well together. And they're 2 people coming from 2 different backgrounds. And they're just wonderful, beautiful, just make you feel good, just sitting with the painting. And Richard Waldendorf, he's a photographer and he does aerial photography. Like the Aboriginal artists that do the dot paintings, and it's sort of like an aerial view. I was just really impressed at seeing the land from that angle, or that way of looking at things, like a map. So I more or less play and intuitively, and the work sort of sparks something off as it's happening. And as I'm working, I'm always thinking about the land and the earth from where it's from. Yeah, I tend to mix everything and anything and just see what reaction it gets, and then maybe use it or not. So with this, I'm just playing to see what happens. All these little accidents end up quite nice. And I've always in the back of my mind, it's like everything's a landscape, and so it sort of influences the way I think. I can see rivers and paddocks. And I really like the way the paddocks are all divided, where the tractor's been around making patterns in the earth. I like the aerial views where you see where the waters have been and where it's dried up, even the salt lakes and the devastation. It's quite sad, it's quite beautiful as well. There's something that looks quite ugly on the land. When you get above, it looks quite beautiful. I'm always amazed at the central desert and Panyamod, the Aboriginal people, at their aerial views. And these are people that have never been in a plane, and it's just pretty amazing just to have that intimate knowledge of your country. I take lots of photos when I'm in aeroplanes. I want to do a series from Perth up to Darwin, just the changing landscapes as you get further up there. That's like Joondalup and the area around there, and I'd like to go to the area and get some resin from there. The Santeria Belga grass tree, my friend says the ex-black boy. And I'm going to come back with the ochres and just talking about the great age of the place, and with the resin as well, like using something that's maybe 800 years old, going into the painting and being part of it. After a fire, a lot of the resin collects at the base of the grass tree, like big blobs, and you can get quite big hunks. And you can crush it up, it becomes a really fine powder. Or you can dissolve it with meths, so it's a bit like shellac. The early settlers used to use it as a furniture polishing, and the Aboriginal people use it as a glue for the tips of the spears and tarp knives. They mix it with a nice mixture of kangaroo dung and charcoal. With the right mixture, it makes like a fiberglass. And it's just an amazing stuff, and you can thin it right down really thin or have it real thick and syrupy. You can get a big range of colours from it. Yeah, I like to use the ochres and the resins, because the resins from the Belga, it's just some of the plants are 700, 1,000 years old, so it's sort of showing the great age of this place. And I've been given ochres from somebody in Kew who I hadn't met, but they saw that I'd used ochres on my painting. They got a nice pink from that way, which is really like treasure. Do a bit of like fibre sculpting and weaving, using natural fibres and colours and dyeing them in raffia and just meadow grass, and then also using brightly coloured wool. And I also make sculptures out of grasses, and I've made a life-size quokka for the sculpture by bathers. It's the wood from Santeria cores that have been laying in the paddock in the hot sun. Some of them would be well over 500 years old. I just see wood as like it's never dead. I think all the lakes are important. With the destruction of lakes comes a loss of cultural memories, because how can you remember when it's not there anymore? You know, talking about, oh, there used to be a lake there, it's just not the same as talking about the lake that exists. So I feel quite passionate about our lakes and wetlands areas. So I've always had that strange feeling about the place, like a connection. And I hope my kids and grandkids will all enjoy that as well.